Hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. And today we're going to take a look at Cool Name Goes Here. This week, I've decided to spotlight the projects that I have been a part of, am a part of, and will be a part of in the future. And today we're going to take a look at Cool Name Goes Here and what does that even mean? So stick around and please. Bring your creative energies and mind fuel because I think you're going to really enjoy this. Again, creatives, community, and kind folks, thank you very much for being here. I do broadcast very early in the morning, so I apologize uh, for the stumbles that happen as my mind and my body try to catch up with each other. But anyway, this is the website to Cool Name Goes Here. The links are down below, as well as the fact that I can actually put this in the chat. And Cool Name Goes Here began, the title of this TTRPG began as a placeholder, as it often does. All of these things often start as a placeholder, and the placeholder name stuck not just because of its not just because we thought it was a cool name, but because of the design philosophy. So back in the early beginnings, the ye olden days of 2023, Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro decided that a policy that they had for the tabletop community in terms of being able to create materials for its version of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, they wanted to end that so that they could keep everything inside of its corporate structure. And that sent ripples throughout the tabletop role-playing community. And what happened from that was there was a groundswell, an uprising, if you will, of creators needing to find out how they are going to continue their livelihoods. Many people created businesses based on an open gaming license, the OGL. And so this project was spawned from that endeavor to create a game that is going to be free, irrevocably, eternally for anyone in a gaming community to use for themselves to create any kind of product, from miniatures and t-shirts to electronic versions of this game. But it is a tabletop role-playing game, and I happen to be one of the consultants for Cool Name Goes Here. So I thought we would take a look at the website and some of the playtest materials and that sort of thing. Oh man. Now, Cool Name Goes Here, again, was a placeholder name with brackets around it, and it was intended to really have an actual name for a tabletop role-playing game. This one specifically is designed around fantasy, but it is not necessarily a fantasy rules system. It is a gaming system like any other, and of course, it being designed by many luminaries. I happen to be included in one of those, although I feel like I'm suffering from imposter syndrome being included with the individuals that are other consultants that are part of this project. But salam as well. Thank you very much. And so let's take a look at Cool Name Goes Here. By the way, it is kind of fun. I even love the logo. It's a CNGH with like a gear around it, as if it's as if it's like part of a mechanism. So Cool Name Goes Here. And this is the design philosophy. We're building a new fantasy role-playing game system with a dream team of RPG designers, and then we're giving it to the world for free. This was a Kickstarter, or technically it still is a Kickstarter, I think. I'm not actually sure. But anyway, we do have a download of the rules, the core rules, and this game is being designed publicly. So there are iterative designs and playtest and things like that. Primarily, it is on the channel Mechanical Muse, who is hosted by Mark Tassin, who is the designer of the Altaltis game world game setting. There, of course, playtest resources and rules online. There's a Discord server and all that kind of thing. There is a plan. There's been in short, there's been a lot of concern around the amount of control large proprietary companies potentially have over RPG system licenses and their restrictions. In the end, that problem actually worked out pretty well for everyone involved, but many people were worried that their games, even their businesses and livelihoods, were at risk. As we said, it worked out okay in the end, but it got a few of us thinking. And so along with this game, there's going to be artwork and some other resources available, including, because I'm on the website, including having those rules online, which we're going to take a look at in just a moment. There's also a Kickstarter. Let's see if it's no. Oh, we can't go there. Okay. All right. I was wondering if the Kickstarter was still, if you could still go to the Kickstarter page, but I have to log in and all that kind of stuff. You can get in on the action. Facebook group, the Cool Name RPG Facebook group, the Discord, there's a mailing list, and of course you can check out the YouTube channel Mechanical Muse, which has updates, and then we have our consulting designers. There's my mug just floating along. But if you're familiar with any of these designers, or maybe if you're not familiar with them, you can check them out and some of the things they've created. But yeah, it's cool. I was a little. There were some challenges when I was included as one of the consultants, and I got a little frustrated. I should have never let my emotions take control, because I was a little bit upset because there were some people who were like using words untowards. Now, previously, I had yesterday talked about the cinematic environs and some of the products that I created, and why was I a consultant. And it was because of my dedication to using exploration and the environment and such. And it did have a twist in the game, which I'm very happy that they were able to. I'm pretty proud of the fact that they were able to take that that small nugget of information that I gave to them, or just a different way of thinking, and use that to develop the game. So let's get into the rules of the game and show you guys. Let's go to the rules online here. Let's see if I can show you what it kind of looks like. So, Cool Name RPG basics. We had a list of very generalized purposes of this game, and basically it's down-to-earth heroes, a handful of each character should have a handful of exceptional abilities. They should be able to travel to wondrous places and action-packed adventures, risking life and limb, obstacle challenges and foes, and to accomplish extraordinary goals. We were thinking Indiana Jones was one of the top media in terms of heroes. We were thinking that would be exemplified in this game. So it is about heroism, not necessarily superheroism. So the characters will tend to be humanistic, maybe at the top of their game, especially if they're peak hero, but not much more than that. And there's some basic concepts: adventures, encounters, challenges, this concept of challenge points, which I'm going to show you in just a minute. And then, of course, there's things like lengths of rounds, points, actions, and whatnot. There is an action check known as an action score and a difficulty score, and normally simplified as an AS and a DS. And your action score are all of the things that add up that are beneficial to you. And so that's what you as a player will refer to, your AS, your action score. So you're always trying to build your action score as high as possible, although it will default, and you won't have to keep adding it together. It will default to your capabilities, and then every once in a while, the environment you're in and the circumstances may modify it up and down in minor ways. And in this regard, you're always adding to it. So you're never really subtracting from it. You're just building your action score. And you're going against a difficulty score, or a DS. And the difficulty score is on the Game Master side. And the Game Master will add together all of the things that will work against you. So rather than doing addition and subtraction on the player side, the player gets to add everything, and then on the Game Master side, the Game Master side gets to add things, and then circumstances may subtract from the difficulty score, or the player may do things that subtract from the difficulty score, but the addition and subtraction portion of it is on the Game Master side. How can I? Won't you be able to zoom in? Maybe I'll go to the. You know what? I'll go to this document here, because it's really difficult to see this. I'm looking at myself, looking at it online, and it's not the best look. So let's replace this with. Yeah, let's replace it with this. So this is the very short 130-page document for Cool Name Goes Here, and it has a pretty unique. It's got a pretty unique dice mechanic system in it, and let's see if we can get to it. Introduction, basics. Basic concepts. Yeah, of course this has no artwork. It is still undergoing development, but I want to show you. Here it is. This chart, this action chart right here, is essentially the basis of this entire game, and it has a very unique, if somewhat strange, dice mechanic. But if you just bear with me to allow me to introduce this to you. So this action chart works for everything you want to do in the game, either randomly with die rolls or just measuring scores for action scores and also difficulty scores. So the average human being is going to have their scores around 3 or 4, regular human being. A weaker human being is going to be around a 2, and then those like children and elderly are going to be below 2. Really, they're not even going to have a die roll. They'll just have a score. And normally in the game, to avoid the default in the game, to avoid rolling dice all the time for everything, is to match up scores, score to score. So for example, if your total score, adding up your attributes and your skills and maybe a device or a magic item or a circumstance, is a 7 and the difficulty is a 6, there's no need to roll. You will be successful over 6. The higher your number, the better you are at the thing. So the default is using 5th edition as a parlance, although this actually happens in many games, is you basically take your average, which would be a 7. In this example, your character would have a 7, and that means every difficulty of 6 and below, you would just be successful over. So if the difficulty is jumping across a gorge, or reprogramming a computer, or intimidating a guard, or sneaking past, I don't know, dogs on alert or something like that, anything that we normally see in our tabletop role-playing games, you basically take your passive score. Now, it's not necessarily passive, but it is an easy way to adjudicate things. Okay, what's your total score? Add up your total score, player adds it up, and that's their action score. we as the game master go, okay, everything as difficult as this would be, what's the difficulty score? Okay, their action score is above that, they are successful. But if we want to add in a level of randomness, and or there's a question of whether success will be possible, and it makes it more dramatic. Let's go back to sneaking past a guard that has dogs and they are on high alert. Despite maybe having a total score of 7, and the guard's total score might be 6, we may still want to roll dice. So your action score corresponds to the dice you would roll for that action. So if you have an action score total of 7, if you look just across, you roll a d6 plus a d8 and you add them together. And there are open-ended dice, or cool name RPG uses open-ended dice or exploding dice. So if you roll a d6 plus a d8, you know what, I might even roll some. So roll d6 plus a d8. I rolled a 7 and a 1, and that's a total of 8, and so 8 would be my effect. If I didn't roll dice and my action score was 7, my effect would just be 7. And we wouldn't even roll dice, that would just be what we would apply to that event or effect or something like that. But if sneaking past guards, which does sound like it might be something that's, is there success? Maybe. Is it more dramatic or whatnot? We may roll dice and so on. Exploding dice or open-ended dice means that if you roll the maximum on that die, you get to roll again and add it to it. Which also means that critical successes are included in all the dice rolls. So if you want to know what your critical success is, it is basically exploding your dice, and you get to add that effect, and that effect could bleed over to other enemies or have a greater effect at the end of something or whatever. So yeah, the exploding dice is the critical effect. Let me see if you guys have anything to say. Drew says, I remember you've shown that before. I sure have. Yep. I still don't like it. It feels too gamey for my taste. It's still oh, what happened to my... Did it disappear? That is really bizarre. What in the who? Where in the how? How did that just stop? How did I just stop sharing that? Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks, Restream. Maybe that's better. Okay, so I hope you guys are seeing it, and I hope you saw the fact that it disappeared, because I didn't see it. Then I moved General away from the hobby to roll for competency. Yep. Okay. Not a problem. Not a problem at all. Sorry, you made me think of the gentleman that runs Gilla RPG and his loot system that doesn't have die rolls. You made me go into that. All right. So now with using this system, this is the basics of the game. If you really take a look at the mathing, if you want to do the mathing, the action score is slightly equal to or slightly below the average of the dice. So an action score of 2 from a d6 is below the minimum, because 3 would actually be the minimum, but the action score tends to be just below the percentage of 50%. So technically, if you take the average of the action score, normally it will be below what your average would be rolling the dice, but the dice are a randomizer, and sometimes you need stress, and the dice represent tension, so that's what that is. Now I'm going to page here. Here's some this is going to be some free art. Action checks and challenges. Now if because I'm doing this to promote basically myself, I brought to light that in tabletop role-playing games, sometimes we can get a little bit myopic. We will focus our attention down to one thing. Normally, that attention focus happens when we talk about dice rolls and combat. And many times, role-playing games will have two funnels. One funnel will usually be combat, so we will roll dice and adjudicate combat, and the other funnel will be skill checks. But I brought to light the fact that dice rolling and percentages and probabilities and things like that don't have to have labels on them at all. And the reason why we do it is because we all agree, like an improv, stage improv, that sometimes we don't even want to know what the outcome is, and we're using dice to adjudicate the outcome of a thing. Are we successful in carousing or intimidation? Are we successful in physically overcoming some sort of obstacle or hazard or whatnot? We're going to use the dice, and then we're going to role play the after effects of that, of the success and or failure, or some kind of mixed success or failure. The yes, no, if, and, or buts, part of that. And so my contribution was, why do we have to limit it to only combat or only skill checks? We can make anything you apply a number to, and then anything you can apply a randomizer to overcome is just simply a challenge. And that challenge could be anything. And why even do we have to restrict what skills or tactics that we use when overcoming any physical, social, or environmental challenge in the first place? And because the game was being designed very much around like a cinematic style of gaming, Indiana Jones, I pointed out the fact that there are many types of things that Indiana Jones does in a particular, in the movie. Some of them are combat related, some of them aren't, some of them are intermingled between one and the other. And you know, when Indiana Jones has to take his whip and whip it on something and swing, how is that any different than punching somebody in the throat and having those echoing punches he'd always throw when he's like punching people? And you know, it dawned on Mark and the rest of the consultants that, well, we really don't have to limit it to this category is only for combat, and this category is only for social, and this category is only for essentially an action check can be used in any way a character sees fit to overcome a challenge of any type. And so to add to that fact, challenges also, here we go, let's see if we can get challenges can also be made where we have a number, and by adding, I gotta use the term, by adding hit points to a challenge, the challenge isn't overcome until that challenge gets whittled down to 0. And wow, my brain. The challenge, as long as the challenge has a positive score and it is not 0, that challenge is still in effect no matter what we consider that challenge to be. And the players may have to, and actually it's preferable to create tension, to have to divide their attention. Let's say they are in a physical confrontation combat, but there may also be other challenges layered on top of each other and have to deal with the thing. A battle on a pirate ship that is sinking is a concept I wanted to include very easily in this kind of game, and they embraced it wholeheartedly. So a sinking ship is one type of challenge. The the undead pirates are the other type of challenge. They are all equally challengeable and defeatable by reducing their challenge rating down to 0. And so enemies don't just have hit points. And then there's this other thing of doing a sailing ship. Everything is a challenge against the players by making their life complicated. That's usually what heroes do. They get into complicated situations, and so those challenges go down to 0. I did mention before about skipping the roll. You know, you do not need to make an action check for every action. If the action is especially simple, if nothing is preventing the character from succeeding given enough time, or if the action is something the character can easily accomplish based on their skills, experience, and training, the game master can declare an automatic success, no rolls necessary, right? And you can start comparing, and comparing scores is the exact same thing. Oops. Let's see if I can get to MOs here, which I really like. Let me see what you guys have to say, and then we'll get into MOs about this game. Thanks. I appreciate that. It's difficult to talk about oneself. A lot of wild games, 2 gaming is just something we're going to have to get used to. Apocalypse, you're funny. And on Adderall, it says, as long as there are consequences for both success and failure. We'll get into that. I'll talk about that in just a moment. How finely do you want to divide these challenges, though? That's going to be up to that will be up to you as the game master, right? Like are we going to undead pirates on pirate ship? How are we? Is each individual undead pirate a challenge? Plus the ship sinking is a challenge, plus the storm that caused it, is that also a challenge? If you want to like divide it up finely like that, you could. Or maybe even the players have a way of overcoming each separate challenge, and then you apply it that way. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. Yeah, there are consequences for both success and failure when it comes to rolling the dice. If I take the example of like driving to work or building a house. We don't normally assign how many skill checks it takes to drive to work or to build a house, right? If you have enough time and energy and there's no stress, even when human beings make mistakes, those mistakes are so minor that we account for those mistakes and continue on. In other words, success and failure don't really matter at the end of the day because there's enough time, energy, resources, and lack of tension to succeed. So a person building a house that accidentally cuts a piece of wood too short, they just go and get another piece of wood and ensure that it's the correct length, and they move on. There's no tension involved, right? You don't fully build a house and then make a skill check and go, oh, I failed, right? That's not usually how that works. Same thing for driving to work. Now, if there's a car accident and you might be involved in a car accident, that's usually when the dice, I'm being facetious with this, but that's usually when the dice hit the table. During the creative process, mind you, I didn't create this game. I'm just a consultant on it. So just be aware that whether there's something I like or don't like, or you like or don't like, this is a creative process amongst a number of people. But something that really helped with the playtesting that people really embraced was this thing known as modus operandi. Now here it does say modi operandi because that is the plural of modus, but it is a MO. It's a modus operandi an MO, and that name stuck too, which I'm real surprised about. But that name stuck too in terms of character capabilities. So what is a MO? An MO is this game's version of your character class. So if you are a warrior or a sorcerer or an oracle or an herbalist or a hunter or something of that nature, you will have an MO. And that MO will have an accompanying score. And again, with the scores and rolling the dice and things like that, let me move back up to this chart here. Your MO will affect your action score. So if you are a warrior and you have an MO of 3, then your base action score will be 3, and then you'll add your statistic or your attribute to it. Like maybe you have a strength of 3. So you have a warrior 3 and a strength of 3, then you now have an action score of 6, so you get to roll 2d6 when performing an action. So how does an MO operate? An MO operates by, for lack of a better term, common sense. And essentially an MO is, if I am a warrior, what can a warrior do? Because if it's defined by what a warrior can do, then I get to add that to anything that involves being a warrior. And that is what your MO is. So that's how, very generally, and there's a little more detail in the rules, but very, very easily and generally, if you want to find out if you want to gain a greater bonus to what you want to attempt to do, as long as it falls into your MO, then you get that bonus. And you just use that, check the chart, and you're done. Now, mind you, once you check the chart once, you don't need to keep referring back to it. So it's not like, I'm going back and forth here, and my point was to try not to go back and forth, and also explain that you don't need to go back and forth, but I'm doing it myself. You don't need to refer to this chart over and over and over again, right? Once you realize, like, my strength is 3 and my warrior's 3, so it's a 6, then you already know your action score is 6, and then there's a 2d6 to it. Now, sometimes are there circumstances where it might increase by 1 or decrease by 1 due to circumstances like wounds or whatever? Yes. Or by being assisted by someone else? Yes. But in general, you already know what that combined thing is. So if I don't know, there's a battle plan by the player characters, and the character that is a warrior steps up and goes, well, I'll stay in the middle of this narrow corridor while you guys move on. We can all agree, guess what? That's definitely within the MO of a warrior, so you get the ability to do that. But if it's going into a library and looking for a book, we all agree, you're a warrior, you don't know anything about about scholarship or something like that. No, you can't use your warrior to do that certain thing. And yes, there are examples of these, I hate to call them classes, but in a way, that's what they are. So MO stuck. Because there was a call to figure out, like, hey, everybody, what would be a better name for this? And everyone's like, modus operandi. I like just MO. There are specializations and things like that in the game, but yeah. Yep. MOs and specializations are discussed in detail. Chapter 4, modus operandi. Now, the challenge scoring modifiers. One last thing, modifiers. For the most, 99.9% of the time, modifiers are a 1-for-1. So an example would be, I'm the game master and I say, there's a cliff or a hill or a wall or something you need to climb. It is raining and it is very windy. And so the difficulty to climb that wall might be a 3, but I also explained to you the wind adds a +1 to the difficulty, and the rain, because it's slick, adds another +1 to the difficulty, making it a 5 total. And so players can get creative by getting rid of the difficulties against you. So a player who has a spell that gets rid of the wind, hey, I'm a wizard and I'm a sorcerer or some kind of spellcaster or something, and I beseech the elementals, the elements, to do a counter wind. Essentially, I want the wind to stop around us. And so your player may roll dice, or maybe we don't roll the dice because you're powerful enough over the winds or something of that nature, and you get to get rid of that modifier, that difficulty, that challenge. And so then you get rid of that +1 difficulty against you, meaning that climbing the wall or the cliffside is not a 5, it's now a 4. And so all of that is done on the game master side of the table. So when the players come up with great ideas to overcome challenges, you can just start knocking them down one by one. And so players can make things easier for themselves. Let's say there's a character who has a total skill of 6 to climb the wall, but with all the things working against them, it's an 8. Then players can start chipping away, other allies can start chipping away at that difficulty to the point where if they get it below a 6, right? So difficulty is 8. We can roll the dice, but our allies are going to help this one player climb the wall who's very good at it, but it's too difficult for them. 3 other players could each knock out one of those modifiers to make it easy, so then you may not even have to roll any dice. Woo! I walked around the corner in that one. And let's see. I can't get. I guess I can't put both of these. Setting difficulty scores. This is just a little example of setting difficulty scores, and a lot of times the game master's like, well, what level? I mean, what would be the difficulty score in the first place? Like, what are some of the averages? And so this is our general table of difficulty scores and setting those difficulty scores. So on a normal, what skill level would you need to overcome this challenge? And that's what these are. Like unskilled would be 2, a novice would be 3, if you're skilled it would be a 6, professional 9, expert 12, master 15, a legendary 20. It starts there, and then you can stack onto these even more. So taking that cliff face, maybe if you're a rock climber, you probably need to be skilled. This is a little more difficult than a novice. You don't necessarily need to be professional, but if you're a rock climber, it's definitely starting at a 6. And then rain and wind and I don't know, it's an earthquake or something, right? You start adding +1, +1, +1, +1, and then you add that up, and then the players work against that. There's we have 2 rules, the reasonably possible rule and the cinematic rule, but we'll get into that in just a moment. Let's see, going to your comments here. Anon says an MO is more about how one does it rather than what though, and I think that distinction is rather important. Exactly. An MO is an MO in short is an agreement between all of us that you have a certain experience, knowledge, methodology of how you're going to do something, and we all agree how you're going to do that thing applies to your MO. And then if we all agree on it, then you just do that thing, or not just do it. It's included in the game. If we all agree it doesn't add to that part, then it's not included in the game. And part of the intricacy is, can you air quotes game the system by making things fit into your MO? Yes, and you won't break the game. An example is superheroes getting over a wall, right? Captain America, Black Panther, the Winter Soldier, Spider-Man are all physically adept. And so getting over a wall is, they're going to describe themselves doing a flip and jumping and grabbing on and swinging their legs over the wall. Whereas characters that can fly can crest that wall with their flight skill, or vision will pass through the wall or whatever. Their method of operation is basically how they do a thing, not necessarily what they do. So if your character, is a mage and has a flight, then your ability to overcome the difficulty of the wall is going to be different, basically. I attack the books and make them submit their knowledge to me. The book rolls a crit and says never. Oh man, yeah, pretty funny. You guys are hilarious. So the reasonably possible rule and the cinematically possible rule. So the reasonably possible rule is basically, and I don't even know why we even have to include this in games, but it's the only restrictions on what you may choose as reasonably possible is that if it doesn't make sense, you can't do it, right? Okay, so while you may be trying to rationalize why you can do a thing, or rather how you do a thing, the reasonably possible rule tells us that there's a reason why you can't do things. So you can't constantly go, I use warrior to convince the guard, I use my warrior MO to do you can't use it for every situation, right? Like we all accept the fact you can't shoot someone with a bow if you don't have arrows. You can't start a campfire underwater. You can't fly if your character doesn't have any natural or mechanical ability to fly, right? There was a meme that went around for a while in the community where, like, I don't know, a heavily armored dwarf tries to jump across the Grand Canyon basically, and is like, I flap my wings, I want to roll, I crit success, did I make it, right? It's like, no. Now, that is the reasonably possible rule. The reason why we added this in here, consultants added this in here, was we didn't want to bog down this game with trying to explain one-off side cases for every little thing. So, in other words, the reasonably possible rule, we didn't want to put down, you are a warrior, but as a warrior, here's a laundry list of things you can't do as being a warrior, right? We didn't want to do that for every skill, every weapon, every magical effect, that just it gets to the point where you start mathematically and literarily working against yourself. We are assuming that people are grown folks and mature, and we hope that you play with other mature people in your gaming session, so your warrior doesn't go into the library and says, well, you know, as a warrior, I've read books before, I should be able to add it, fold arms out, bottom lip out, you know. Now, to account for to get away from the only realistic things can happen, we have a cinematically possible rule as well, right? Like, so, you know, here's some examples. These are kind of funny in a way. There is also the cinematically possible rule, right? So, you know, having run out of arrows, the archer fires a piece of copper tubing, or a thrown lantern breaks on the floor and explodes into a ball of fire, burning everyone in the room. Or a character falls from a 4-story building, but a merchant's tent breaks their fall and they emerge unharmed. Or a thief picks a complex lock using nothing but a rat bone, a sewing needle, and a rusty nail. And so the cinematically possible rule is that we call those stunts, and when you roll the dice, if your effect is over the challenge, you succeed. But because you're attempting to perform a stunt, if your effect is below the challenge, you instead lose your vitality. Vitality is basically the hit point structure in this game. And there are 3 categories: is physical, mental, and social or emotional vitality. And you will lose that if you attempt to perform a stunt. There's also critical failures and critical failure effects. And it's pretty difficult to get a critical failure because you get a critical failure if you roll ones. And there are also examples of, like, you know, coming up with new ways to have crits. Usually this involves missing an action, game master discretion, and there's a D12, a random D12 list of things that you might have happen. Like if you trip and fall, you pull a muscle, you drop your weapon, things like that. Critical successes, weapon breaking, things like that. Here's part. I have pat myself on the back on this one. The challenge point system, okay? And this is an example of a challenge and a challenge point system. And like I said, the challenge will still be there until it's brought down to 0. So you can apply a challenge, and examples of challenges tend to be obstacles, hazards, conundrums, and things like that in front of the players. Sinking ships, getting away from the guard, city guard, reprogramming computers, stopping the ancient ritual, getting through the mountain pass. All of these things are challenges, and players may be distracted from accomplishing those challenges, but it still means if they get distracted from it and they don't reduce the challenge to 0, it's still there. So crossing the accursed desert, you knew I was going to say that. Crossing the accursed desert might be a very large challenge. You could make that challenge 20, 30, 50. Now, you may say, well, we can't roll a 50 on the dice we're rolling. And the point is, no, you won't be able to roll 50 on that. What happens is you can roll your dice or use your base level action score, and you only get across the accursed desert when the challenge of getting to the accursed desert drops to 0. Otherwise, you're still in the desert. And you can apply that to travel. You can apply that to a burning building. You can apply it to the hold of the ship filling with water as it begins to sink. You're in a storm. You are in a blizzard or anything like that. You can apply those challenges. And now, mind you, the blizzard might be blinding everyone and it's frigid cold and whatnot. And yes, you can be very creative without rolling dice, and players just come up with a great idea like, oh, I don't know, we're in a blizzard, we're going to get inside some place where there's shelter, which immediately stops the hazard, right? But if the players are engaged in a combat with some I don't know, wizard adapted, Yeti ogres or whatever, and they can't see where their enemies are at, they don't know how many are out there, and they're being attacked, well, unless they do something to stop, it's still going to be there. That challenge will still be there. So I like that fact, because in some ways players may, here's a challenge of entering the tower. Entering the tower challenge, it goes on, it talks about how each of the players tries to use some of their capabilities to reduce the challenge points, which starts out as 6, and they still haven't gotten all the way into the tower, through the tower, past the guards and locked doors and everything, to steal something, because there's still some points left. And then here's an action. They want to try to climb the tower, so the GM applies a difficulty score of 7, and they got to climb up there, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to go through all that, reading all that. But here is a challenge point table, and challenge points are like hit points, right? It's I use my skill to take the hit points down, and we're basically applying hit points to everything. So convincing the guard might be a small challenge, so it might only take 1 to 2 rounds, and you only need 5 challenge points to convince the guard. Now, the guard might be distracted, and so the players might be like, "Hey, guard, psst, psst, come back here. I still need to talk to you, right?" So they can get the points down. Because if they don't, the guard's like, "Hell no, I'm not letting you in here." And so there may be other things that might be in the way of getting the players to get the challenge down, which might be pretty interesting, right? So you could actually spread these challenges out over a long period of time. You do see here where it says number of rounds. That's like you're trying to get the challenge down, boom, 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 like very quickly. But you could very easily translate rounds into hours, days, weeks, months, years, even. So an example would be, you're in trade negotiations, and the trade negotiations are going to be there for a week, which means let's go to 3 to 5, or maybe even 6 to 10, right? Let's say you want to make it, let's split the difference. It's challenge points of 12. And you will, each day you have the ability to try to knock that 12 down to 0 by the end of the week, through social interactions and things. But it might break down to the last minute, and you still have like 7 points left, and it's 2 days left, and you're like, shit, how can we convince this person to agree to our trade negotiations? Because if we leave here empty-handed, it's going to be bad for us, right? So you can do it that way as well. And it also talks about things not being possible. The reason why we're calling it challenge points also is because we didn't want to prescribe specific methods to overcome the challenge, because sometimes players might be very, very, they may be very creative. Things like that. Here we go. This represents what I've been talking about. The reason these varied approaches work in combat is because an enemy's challenge points represent more than their health. Their challenge points also represent morale, mental stability, endurance, strategy, determination, spirit, and experience. So you can use what we would normally consider non-combat skills in combat to overcome a challenge. So it's not necessarily 0 hit points that we're working on, it's overcoming the challenge. So a character not very well skilled in combat could lead a beast into a ravine and get that beast stuck between some rocks. So the beast being trapped in, I don't know, rocks and gravel and vines and a net or something like that is just as what do you call it? Just as effective as someone pulling their sword and stabbing the creature to death. So the scared, fearful character could literally run from a monster, but statistically in the game, they are just as equally reducing the challenge of that monster, that bestial monster, just like any combat-oriented character would. And that kind of represents the cinematic portion of it. And then talk about creative combat actions. That's kind of what I just described here. And then there's timed and group challenges and things like that, like talking about like a battle plan, like maybe there's a military and there's an army, and there's certain actions, like different characters may take different particular actions, like devise a strategic approach might be a DS4, maybe cast a spell of silence is a DS difficulty score of 6, or move silently unseen might be a difficulty score of 4, and each player may want to take their own action to overcome the enemy, which might be different difficulties, but they're all trying to reduce that same complete challenge. And we go into those details, but I want to get to let's get to the MOs, and then I'll get back to what you guys have to say. You know what, let's go to attributes first, and then we'll get to the MOs. But first, I need to see what you guys have to say. Transferring that responsibility to GM creates another set of problems, though. But that's always been the case in every game, right? I mean, the responsibility of everything in the game has always been the game master's, dungeon master's problem. We're just trying to make it so that you don't have to accommodate different rules for different actions for different things. It's all under one thing. Like, for example, you know, in 5th edition, you have to worry about CR levels, challenge ratings, and you have to worry about hit points and armor classes and so many other things, right? You know, the DCs of accomplishing different things. Same thing in this game. A little simpler in this one. Shinobi says, does that mean you can slowly chip away at a difficulty task like how the desert is 50? You can still bring it down to 30, then 20, and so forth? Yes. So there's a difference between I hate making these comparisons. Armor class and hit points are two separate things. In this game, difficulty score and challenge points are two separate things. So getting across the accursed desert of 50, which is pretty unreasonable, to be honest with you, but to get across the desert of 50, one character may use survival skill, and I will, as the game master, will assign a difficulty score to overcome that. Maybe it's a 4 or 6 or 7 or whatever. Another character may find a nomadic tribe and say, hey, let's parlay with that nomadic tribe and they'll help us get across this accursed desert. That may be a different difficulty score through charisma and social interaction, but both characters, the lone traveler going across the desert and the charismatic character that's like, let's travel along with these other folks, both are contributing to taking down the challenge. So, chipping away at it, 50, 30, 20. Yes, that's exactly what that is. There's an example in here talking about a sinking ship, and in the sinking ship, each player attempts to do something different to keep the ship from sinking because it's filling with water. So one person's like, I'm strong, I'm going to take a table and slam it up against the big hole ripped in the side of the ship to try to prevent the water filling into the hold. So a physically strong character is trying to keep the ship from sinking. Another character may try to do something else. I'm going to grab a bucket, the bilge pump or something, I don't know, and try to get water out of this ship. It's something different. So, although that's still physical, but you get my point. You get the point. All right, so this game, it will be free, and it will come in 2 versions. There's going to be the core rules and the expanded rules. So understand that the core rules are going to be far more simplistic, and simplistic not necessarily meaning simple or for lower level people. No, that's not really what we mean. What we mean is, depending on the kind of game you want to design or play with this, it may not be necessary to expand the rules out to get a lot of that those little nitty gritty bits and pieces. Maybe you only need something very generalized. So you're gonna see this with the stats. So we have primary attributes and secondary attributes, and in the core rules, both are going to be included. You don't necessarily, if you have primary attributes, you don't need to use the secondary attributes, but that's up to you for your gaming group. So for the primary attributes, let's see, we have body, mind, and spirit. So those are your primary attributes. And under each of those, there are 3 secondary attributes. And those 3 secondary attributes, you can change the scores of them so that you have a differentiation, say, in body. So, of course, with body, we have strength, coordination, and toughness. Oh, my brain's not working today. Strength, coordination, and toughness for your body. For your mind, sorry, I know I'm flipping back and forth here. Sorry. So strength, coordination, and toughness for body. For mind is intellect, creativity, and willpower. And for spirit, and I can't remember those. Yeah. Presence, awareness, and resilience. And resilience is like willpower, basically. Presence is like your charisma, and awareness, of course, is like your perception ability. And then there's there are defenses, body defense. There's a body defense, and you can dodge, parry, and block things. There's a mind defense, and of course there's a spirit defense. And then here are human attribute scores. 0 and 1, insignificant, weak, average is 2, superior is 3, exceptional is 4, world class is 5, and legendary is 6. Stats and numbers, we kept the numbers very, very tight and low. So despite the fact that chart goes from like 2 to 15 for the action scores, getting up into the 15s is like fiends, celestials, dragons, godlings. Most human characters aren't going to get above 8, 9, or 10 at the maximums, and there will be dice associated with those according to the oh, my brain. Anyway, you get the point. Of course, with body, mind, and spirit defense, you also have body, mind, and spirit vitality, and very easy to calculate because you already have your stats built in. So like for your vitality, your hit points or whatever, you got strength plus your coordination plus your toughness. Wow, those are all your physical stats. and it goes on. Mind vitality is your intellect, creativity, and your willpower, and then spirit vitality is your presence, awareness, and resilience. Pretty easy, pretty simple to figure that out. The MO that you choose, your modus operandi you choose, will, to recover your vitality, will give you a benefit in recovering one of the 3 vitalities. So a warrior has a greater ability to regain their body vitality. A wizard would gain their mind vitality back, and a spiritualist, a cleric styled character, would probably gain their spirit vitality back. Let's go to MOs. Here we go to MO. And also there's going to be rules to create your own MOs, so don't worry about that. You can create your own for your own games. And there's also the ones here, so you could kind of relabel them and rejigger them for whatever effect you want. Also, because of the body, mind, and spirit vitality, you can place in front of your characters non-physical challenges that have the same threat potential as a physical challenge. So an example with mind and spirit vitality, the players could be at a dinner party and they have to socially navigate, and if their vitality drops down, they may explode emotionally. Call of Cthulhu, and you want to have fear type of tactics or threats in your game. So fear and trauma may be a thing you want to add into the game. You might want to add emotional stakes to a thing. Maybe this is a war-torn country and the players have been battling for months, days, weeks, months, even years on end, and it has an emotional toll on the characters. So you could have challenges of them overcoming their own traumas, and you can very easily insert them into challenge points and balancing. Do we physically move forward when we should really be gaining our morale back and alleviating our our psychological issues, balancing those things. So same thing in this game as well. We didn't want to do a hard line and cut that off. And I think if you want to design your own game or you want to design your own world, you could include that in this game. Again, talking about MO scores and specializations, but let's get some examples here. Here we go. We've got an athlete. In a breakout box. The descriptions of the MOs and the suggestions for specializations are starting points for understanding your character and using the character in the game. There are not limits to what your character may try or what they know. For instance, it would be impossible to describe everything the typical wizard learns during their training. We need multiple rule books just for the wizard. Instead, when a situation comes up in the game, not covered by the descriptions here, it is up to you and the game master to decide, do most wizards learn about this during their training? If you answer yes, then you may add your MO to the action score. And that's very, very simple. And then of course, anyone can try anything. Remember, your character can try anything you can imagine, even if it isn't something a character with your MO would have studied. For example, in most fantasy worlds, painting isn't something included in the warrior MO training. Fine arts tend to get overlooked when training someone to survive on the battlefield. This doesn't mean a warrior can't try their hand at painting if the need arises. It's basically like, don't get top-headed. In other words, don't worry what's written down on your character sheet. Tell the game master what you want to try to do, and then we go from there. And so here's a bard. Bard is our first one here, and just a very simple description. And then we have bard specializations. Specialization, yes, it gives you a +1. Remember I was talking about the +1s? So we decided not to add +1 to everything. So we decided to just write it down, and writing it down is the +1 category bonus or action score bonus. the expanded rules, we may include, like, if you have a specialization of rapier, you may have a rapier score of like +3 or something of that nature. We're still working on that because it throws the math off slightly if you do that, but very slightly. We're still trying to get the playtesters to break the game, and they haven't done that yet. So maybe not. But there's some specializations and other traits that you can list here, and it tells you, like, hey, if you pick heavy armor for this MO, then you might want to give if you add something, you might want to take something away somewhere else. And it talks about if you're a spellcaster, yes or no, and how that works. And it went very, 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 very simple with this. Druid and merchant. I might stop on one of these, and I'll talk about magic in a minute. That's essentially what it takes to. I mean, it gives you the rules on how to design an MO, but like for Druid, it's. Let me shrink this down just a little bit. For Druid, it's not much. It's all this. Oh, don't go over there. I get. Oh, it's a 2-page spread. Oh well. So for these these two MOs, this is all that's really necessary and written down, because we wanted to make the core rules as simple as possible. And then in the expanded rules, you can get a little more detail in it. Specifically down here under Druid traits, you'll see that there's armor, and then underneath armor, you'll see defenses, which is dodge and spirit, and then vitality will say spirit. So your MO will add to for Druid will add to their dodge and spirit defense, and for their vitality score, to regain their vitality, they get to add their MO to regain their spirit. So, yep. Every one of the MOs has some sort of defense attached to them, whether it's like dodge, parry, or block. Maybe if it's physical, and then they may have a mind and or spirit defense. Now you can describe that defense any way you want to, but essentially it's like mental defense is like mental toughness or awareness. Like for a merchant, it's not necessarily that they're just mentally tough, but they're like, I know how to bargain and parlay with people. I think you're trying to confuse me, kind of thing. He always Mark wanted to add I believe it's pronounced Montbank. I don't know how to pronounce that word. It's a person who is slick with their words. Ars Magica. I love that game. All right, okay. Sorry, getting back to your comments. I apologize. I skipped a lot. Here we go. Shai says your brain's working better than mine. Yeah, doing these things very early in the day is pretty difficult for me. Michael Garrett says creativity as an attribute is still a tricky to get my head around to use during the game. I'll go back to that for creativity if you'd like me to. In short, when a player says my character wants to come up with a creative idea, you use the creative attribute to figure out if they do a MacGyver, right? Like I want to knock the small boulder out the way to cause a larger avalanche. Then you might want to say, I might have to use your creativity skill. But we'll go back. I mean, attribute. But you can go back to that. We'll go back to it if you don't mind. All you need to know is green is not a creative color. It's silly. I love Ars Magica. It's a game. There's a new version of it too. Drew says every character has just one MO, or can someone play something like a warrior poet? Yes, the beginning in the beginning, you get 3 points for your MO. You can split them, so you can use an MO of 2 in one thing and an MO of 1 in something else. So yes, you can multi-class if you wish. And in your own, if you decide to make up your own game, you could literally make up MOs that are designed to be mixed and matched. So an example would be you're running a exploration Star Trek sci-fi game with this system, and each crew member is supposed to be multi-talented. So someone may be a chaplain and a medic. Someone may be a botanist and a geologist, right? And you could make MOs based around that kind of thing. I am a security officer, and I'm also a engineer or something like that. Yeah. Playtesters can't break the game sounds like success, or have they been too nice? I'm thinking they've been too nice, because that happens too, right? Like you want to have playtesters, but if playtesters are too gung-ho about the system, they may be hesitant to want to break it, and you got to be careful of that too. It's a weird thing that happens though, but it does happen. It would be like fans of Draw Steel / MCDM and fans of Matt Colville not wanting to, or feeling like they're offending him if they try to break his game. You know, that happens. Anon says, what is instead of specializations you gave bonuses for each limit to its use? We thought of that, came up, and you have every possibility to use it. Like you could give people like 2 points, 3 points, 7 points, or a die roll per day to use a thing. We just didn't, the core rules, we didn't want them to have too much. We didn't want them to juggle too many resources, because there's already vitality and things like that. Anyway, let me go backwards a little bit, slightly backwards. Character attributes. Creativity represents the character's ability to assemble information in new and novel ways. It is the primary attribute used in artistic creation, thinking outside of the box and solving problems where the answer lies outside the realm of accepted truths. Creativity is the primary attribute used to create and appreciate works of art, craft new items, and cast spells as a sorcerer. A creativity action check may also be used to gain a flash of insight when you are out of ideas. That is to say, get a hint from the game master. So that is the attribute for creativity. It's a little bit of a default, and you can also apply it to the bardic, clerical styled classes as well, and such. So yeah, yep. Anyway, there's a bunch of modus operandi. Let's see if I can page through these relatively. No, you know what? So, there we go. Let's see if we can see some of these. Bard, cleric, athlete. Come on. There's the druid, merchant, Mountebank. The Mountebank's most dangerous weapon is their wit, and their strongest armor is a well-crafted lie. They can talk their way past the gates of a heavily guarded fortress, out of a deadly trap, or into the good graces of their deadliest enemy. That is not to say they let their rapiers grow rusty. After all, things tend to get a tad uncomfortable if their mark ever sees through their Mountebank's verbal glamour. And I've never heard that term before, but it's in here. Listen, if I got to add in my own little 2 cents, so I'm glad other designers and collaborators got to add theirs in there. Anyway, there's the Outlander, basically like a ranger type, ranger hermit. There's a scholar, sorcerer, thief, tradesperson, warrior, wizard, and creating new MOs, and talking about like giving them a weapon, dominant vitality, if they are a spellcaster, and if they wear armor, and creating specializations. And then there's actions, and oh, here's a free piece of art as well. Come on, spin one out. I gotta give the artist credit. Remind me to give the artist credit. I know I'm going a bit long here. So there are a number of action types, and some of the action types you're going to be very familiar with, and then there are others specific to the game that deal with the challenge point system, and you'll very easily understand what those actions are. So aiding an ally, that's easy. Assisting someone is also very easy. Attack. Clear and de-escalate are things that you might not be normally associate with tabletop games, but we do that. So clear is to counteract a modifier to the difficulty score. So when the game master says, you know what, it's raining, or the ship is tossing and turning, or there's a large crowd and it's difficult for you to track your enemy, or things like that, you can take a clear action, which is basically, I'm going to counteract the thing that's making what we're trying to do difficult. And a player who may not have, may not feel they have an appropriate skill or want to add to the encounter. An example would be, let's go with something very stereotypical, the Bard and the Barbarian. So the Bard is trying to negotiate. The Barbarian doesn't have a social skill, but the Barbarian player character wants to be involved in it. So the Barbarian can act as the Bard's bodyguard, giving a threat potential to the Bard, right? So you can aid and assist as the Barbarian, and like, I'm going to stand behind him with my arms folded with a, you know, and mean mug this guy. Or maybe the Barbarian is like, you know what? The person they're talking to is trying to intimidate my best friend, the Bard. So the Barbarian walks up, and I'm going to stand in front to basically take away his intimidation, his greater intimidation with his bodyguards, right? My presence is going to take away his presence of his bodyguards, kind of thing, right? And then you kind of equalize the difficulty, things like that. Although actually the way I'm describing, that's more of like an aid or assist. But whatever, you get my point. What did I talk about before? Oh, the sinking ship. And there's water pouring into the sinking ship. And my character wants to stop the water from rushing in because that's a difficulty thing or whatever. De-escalate. De-escalate is another thing that happens with challenges. And let's see if we go to a de-escalate situation. But anyway, there's de-escalate, interacting, of course. Obstruct is another one that players can do. Of course, recovery, slow, and withdrawal. But let's go to a de-escalation and tell you. Sorry, because de-escalation is a part of the challenge. My brain's not working very well. So de-escalate is a type of action you can take, and a successful de-escalation reduces the number of challenge points by which an escalating challenge increases at the end of the round by an amount equal to the effect. Whew. So you might want to have a easy escalating challenge or reinforcements. So you're fighting hobgoblins and there's reinforcements coming in, which means the challenge of hobgoblins keeps increasing every round. Let's say it increases by 2 every round. So you want to de-escalate that challenge. So you stand in the way, or you block the door of the raiders that are trying to, hobgoblin raiders that are trying to attack your player characters. So you may want to de-escalate the enemy that keeps reinforcing over and over and over again. And the same thing can happen with the flooding ship is a good example. lava flows and tumbling boulders and falling snow and all these things. Trolls that keep regenerating, and the Hydra, when you cut the head off and it grows, that is an escalating challenge. Every time you cut a Hydra's head and it grows 2 more in the place of the 1 is an escalating challenge, and you can de-escalate that challenge. And one way to do that, to make it a little bit more difficult for the player characters, is like stop the escalation. And this one talks about about the don't drown challenge. It's pretty funny. So, but I'm holding you guys too long for this. But here we have the party who are shackled together in the hold of a pirate ship thought things couldn't get any worse until the game master tells them the storm has driven their ship onto the reef and torn a gash in the side of the vessel. The hole is right where they are all chained, and the ship is rapidly taking on water. The game master considers their situation and assigns 4 challenge points to the challenge of Don't Drown. In addition, this is an escalating challenge, and the rising water adds +4 challenge points at the end of every turn. And it's written, let's see if we can get down here. And it's written as challenge Don't Drown, CP 4+4. So Don't Drown is a challenge point of 4, and then it's +4 every round. So Altis was already working to pick the lock on the group's shackles, but with seawater gushing in suddenly, her work takes on new urgency. The locks would require the skills of a skilled locksmith to pick, so the difficulty score is 6. The game master also declares that the water rushing in and Altis makeshift lock picks both modified the difficulty score. So pick the lock is a DS of 8, meaning 6 because you need to be skilled, +1 for the rushing water, and +1 for the makeshift lock picks. The CP4 isn't that big of a challenge, but the difficulty score is high enough. Beth worries Altis won't manage to reduce the challenge by more, or the challenge points more than a point or 2 each round. I'll never get us out fast enough, she shouts. Wargar, Steve's character, isn't much of a locksmith, but he can slow the water down. Steve declares that Wargar grabs one of the nearby tables and slams it against the hull to block the hole, as a de-escalate action. Wargar rolls his action dice and gets an effect 4, reducing the +4 escalation to 0. As long as he can hold the table, that is. Work fast, Wargar shouts. And so that's an example of, okay, you got to pick the lock. There's rushing water in. What are we going to do? And players come up with creative ideas, and they use an action to do such a thing. Whew. And then, of course, there's encounters and action encounters. Action encounters are the fast-paced cinematic killing things that you want to do in combat that you can add into the combat to make it a little bit more interesting. Piloting ships, escalating challenges, and these are all the examples of making those challenges even more interesting. So like escalating challenges are things that keep getting worse and worse for the players, and they can choose to do something or not do something about it. Here's another one, triggered events. So triggered events are basically, it's my version of if-then. Like if something happens, then this other thing happens, right? Triggered events can happen at specific points in the encounter, and a common element. Triggered events might also occur after a certain number of rounds pass, when a particular challenge is overcome or failed, when the characters perform a specific action. A triggered event could be flammable gases in a room. Someone lights a fire. Or it could be a rope that is snapping, and it's like a braided rope. It's got 3 strands on it. One strand breaks, second strand breaks. Okay, there's 1 strand left. It breaks when the 3rd strand breaks, right? Tumbling the warehouse goods that are being on a crane, and it falls down or something like that. And then there's actions versus challenges. and what kinds of against those challenges, and adjudicating them as well. And then here's a table of some common ones, action types, and just kind of breaking them down so you can add them in. Balancing, like walking a tightrope or shimming along a ledge or standing atop a pole. Breakdown action, climbing action, disarm trap action, drag or push actions, hiding actions, things like that. And then there's like modifiers to it, so that you can add, and each of these modifiers is like a +1, right? So you can say like, let's go straight across the very top here. So you players might want to take a balance action. You add this into the game, like, oh, there's a tightrope or a ledge or standing on top of a pole or something. And then you can add difficulty, like maybe the width is only like 3 inches. And then you can add things like, is it slippery or strong winds? Is it an angled surface? You know, icy, wet and slick, oily, that kind of stuff. And then players can get kind of like navigate around those or get rid of them or things like that. Dragging and pushing stuff, of course, jumping, hiding, running, lifting, lockpicking, riding, searching, swinging, etc., etc. And then social encounters. And social encounters are very similar to it. I'm gonna let you guys go. Quick flex tape. Here goes the flex tape again. Funny. Drew says that the escalation seems not to kill the characters, so how is determining when the characters would have drowned? And that is something, this is a development thing, right? Not every escalation will be lethal, or at least detrimental. So and this is part of me, this is why I'm a consultant, is that when a thing escalates, will that just subtract from the character's vitality or their capabilities and things like that? Basically, will it do, because there's body, mind, and spirit vitality, will it, or could it, or is it going to severely detract from that? Or is the escalation increasing the difficulty it is for them to do other things, right? And so we're going to have to balance that out. I feel like both of those are options, but the more options you put in, the more difficult it'll be for the game master to kind of like adjudicate those things, because they'll be juggling too many balls. So you don't want to, you're a beginning juggler, and I'm not a good juggler at all. You add in another tennis ball, and you're juggling 4 and then 5 and 6. So it's trying to balance those. And of course, we have core rules and expanded rules. And so therefore, we could throw everything, the more expanded stuff, the more complicated stuff we can throw into that. But I agree with you. You are correct that in the combat section, it does talk about, having your vitality getting eaten away, and what you do to resist that. Yeah. And mind you, remember, the players get to create their action score, which is everything that they get to add to what they want to do. And then on the game master side, we get to keep adding things to how difficult it is to overcome an obstacle. So at a certain point, they may not be able to even roll dice to overcome that obstacle, which would be a failure. And that failure may not be death. It could be capture or intimidation or fear or exile or what have you. So the outcome of an event doesn't necessarily need to be death, but the outcome of the event could be something prescribed. Like you said, like it could be drowning. It could be arrest. It could be losing memories. It could be getting ejected out of a pocket dimension or something of that nature. But this is just an example. By the way, if you go to the website, and like, remember I was saying it's free, there are these playtest rules, and we encourage anyone and everyone that was part of the Kickstarter or not to include their 2 cents, which I'm going to bring this up as well, and including those kind of details. And then we need to rationalize how important that detail is. And we also have two categories to put those details in. Core rules, it may not be necessary. Expanded rules, it may be the perfect place to put it, or it could be the opposite. Core rules, it has to be there. Expanded rules, it may be something you might want to get rid of or mitigate or what have you, or talk with your players to describe, like, hey, we're doing a gritty survivalist Dark Sun campaign. This particular rule we're going to get rid of in the expanded rules, but in the core rules it's standard. So yeah. So guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. I just kind of wanted to show off my some of the things that I was able to introduce into this game, things like escalating and triggered encounters, making all challenges equal in terms of their, oh, I didn't show you a character sheet. can't do this and not show a character sheet. Let's see. Let's see if I can find one. Let's get online here. And sorry, I'm trying to get to it so I don't have to roll past you this entire time. Encounters, action. Come on. Where is the character sheet? I've had it up. Character creation. No. Sorry, I got another example. Okay, I'm just gonna have to page through this. Character sheet. Here we go. Looks pretty damn busy, but it makes a lot of sense. Character name, lineage, human, elf, dwarf, whatever. Your name, your MO at the very top. We have to the very left the primary attributes: body, mind, and spirit, and then the three attributes that are there. Pretty classic, to be honest with you. There are, to the very right, we have our defenses: dodge, parry, and block, and then our mind defense and spirit defense. And underneath it, you'll see, like, for dodge, it's your coordination. For parry, it's strength, and for block, it's toughness. And then under mind defense, it's creativity, and spirit defense is awareness. In the middle, we have our vitality scores, your hit points, and your maximum, and then your current, and then how many wounds you have. I believe if you suffer an effect that's instantly goes above your vitality, you end up getting a wound. And vitality is like stress in Blades in the Dark, similar to that. And then right here in the middle are your favorite actions. So you can write everything down so you don't have to go to the action table, even though it is on a character sheet. So you can take whatever action it is, whether it's combat, magical, social, or whatever. You write down your actions, your attribute related to it, your MO if it's appropriate, or MOs, because you can multi-class if you want to call it multi, or you can gain multiple modi operandi. Any specialty, and then miscellaneous. Miscellaneous might be a piece of equipment, it might be leverage, it may be the circumstances, and then your action score or dice. Please don't call it ass dice. Your action score, and then your effect modifier. There's armor, and mind you, all these numbers are very low, so you're very rarely going to go into double digits. The numbers will go between like 1 and 6 or 7, maybe 8s, and that's about it. Armor, like armor score and the armor type, usually armor runs like 1, 2, 3, 4. Your initiative score is your coordination plus your creativity plus your awareness, and your initiative score is right in here, and you just list that down, and that's it. Your MO, you can put down 2 MOs. So you put down the name of the MO, your score, some specializations. This box right here is basically all you need for character classing, and that's it. And then during when you gain, I'm going to do this air quotes, levels, you gain levels in the thing, you can actually gain more specializations, or your score could go up, and as you just write it down. So leveling up is basically just a 3x5 card. Powers and abilities of, depending on like what's going on and what kind of game you're running. Is it humanistic? You're probably not going to have too many powers, but you may have certain capabilities or special abilities, stunts and things like that. If you are like an elf or a dwarf, you know, the usual thing. Dwarves, underground, see in the dark, stone stuff. Elves, heightened awareness and whatnot, things like that. Maybe something special for your game. And then there's like notes for your character and various types of equipment. And equipment is very simple as well. For example, lockpick tools might just be like, you might write down lockpick tools. You really don't need to write down much more than what the item is, but you could. So you could put lockpick tools and beside it +1 when picking locks, but you don't need to do that. It's actually incorporated into the game already. So if you put down lockpick tools and you have an MO of thief, and one of your specializations is breaking and entering or picking locks, right? And then as we move back up into the character sheet, you can just put down your favorite actions. Picking locks, put down your attribute, which would probably be coordination. Your MO, thief, you add a number in there. Specialization, you know, picking locks, you put that in there. Miscellaneous, lock picking tools, you have your action score, and then when you roll the dice, you have your effect. And it could be a modifier to the effect, but it's very rare. So, long story short, this is the beginnings of Cool Name Goes Here. And mind you, we actually mean it. So lastly, Cool Name Goes Here is for you to design what the name of your game is going to be and how you would modify your game. It's still in development, to be honest with you. The playtesting rules are 131 pages long, so it's pretty detailed. Changing the mechanics. Let me move back down to this chart here. Changing this mechanism here. There was a desire to not have this mimic any other game system, and despite the fact that there was a pretty vocal group of people that wanted to keep it D12, and then there was a bunch of people that wanted to do dice pooling. And if you take a look at this chart with the action score and the dice, you'll notice that it moves up and down by 2. So each action score is in a way is the average of the dice. It's actually the average of the dice. One step below 50%. I know that's there is a math. If you actually go to Mark Tassin, he actually has the actual math and probabilities related to it. It's actually more beneficial for you to roll dice than to keep the action score, but it still makes it very simple for the action score, right? So, but if you roll the dice, if you take a look at the dice progression, it just goes up by 2, and it just keeps continuing up by 2, if you think about it. So, you know, a D8 is 2 points above a D6 and so on and so forth. So rolling a D6 and a D8 is 2 iterations above rolling 2D6. Now, mind you, that means that the bell curve is strange, but it actually works out pretty well. And the reasoning why the bell curve works well, say the difference between rolling a D6 plus a D12 versus rolling 3D6, on average, or if you roll D6 and a D12, you may get a higher number. But if you roll 3D6, you're also going to explode your dice more often. And you have 3 opportunities to explode your dice rather than 2 opportunities rolling a D6 and a D12. So mathematically and probability wise, it is a little funky with the brain, but it actually does work. So anyway, that's it. Oh man, wow. So give me the Mo-ass dice. Give me Mo-ass dice. Yeah. Shai says ASS is the clinical abbreviation for aspirin in Germany. I didn't know that. Drew says the sheet looks far too busy for my taste. Reminds me of some systems from the 90s that also went for such overloaded character sheets. It's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that. Also, the sheet, it doesn't tell you how to make a character, but it kind of gives you like, oh, well, this stat is for that, and that one's for that. So it is a little bit busy. I agree. I'm a little more simplistic in my tastes. So, but I'm a consultant, so it's not my game. I'm a small cog in a big machine, and I like it. Drew says, I'm sure it will become easier with some experience, but I think this might hurt many people would even want to try it. Maybe. Well, see, and that's where the playtesting comes in, right? So, and also the people who helped build it. So those were the ones that were like, hey, we like this kind of thing. So you got to go with the average, right? Or the people involved in it, And what ends up happening, especially with playtesting, is yes, you can say, well, I don't like it, but then we need to know what to replace it with. So not liking something isn't very good for playtesting. It's what about it didn't you like, and what could we replace it with? For me, the most important things on this entire character sheet are to the left, and those are your attributes, the action table right below it, everything on the left side, and the modus operandi. And that, to me, that's the important part. The rest of it is a little fiddly, but it's pretty easy to figure it out. It's very easy, right? I mean, if I don't need to give you a character right now. If I just told you, you are Warrior 2, Scholar 1, and all of your attributes are 3s, you're done. You're already done. Because you could very easily figure it out, right? You're like, okay, if I'm a Warrior 2, Scholar 1, I'm going to go to the library and find a book. And I go, okay, well, to find that book, you need to be skilled. So it's a difficulty of 6. And you go, okay, well, I'm Scholar 1 plus my intelligence, or what is it? Intellect is 3. 3, 1 is 4. I have an action score of 4. I'm going to roll a d10, and then you have to beat a 6 or higher. And I just did that on the fly. Right? Pretty easy. Yeah, one of the reasons folks got into Vampire the Masquerade back in the day was the simplicity of the character sheet. Yeah, and it even told you how to make a character in that character sheet. I really like the Vampire character sheets. Any of the contributors to the system already said they are going to actually use that in one of their own projects? I haven't heard that yet. I've got my own project in my back pocket, and part of me was even considering overlaying this into Obsidian Star, but I think Obsidian, it would be too busy. I'm still considering it, but whatever. No, I have not heard any of the contributors talking about what they want to do with it. I think it would behoove the contributors to kind of come out with like a meta setting. So if I can sell this to you, here's an elevator pitch. My elevator pitch for my meta setting would be a setting in which a cataclysm happens, in which the horizon is nothing. The horizon behind you is nothing but death, and the entire world requires everyone to pick up and move. If you stay still, there's something, and I haven't described exactly what it is, but there's something moving from the old land, the place you came from, that has been slowly creeping across the landscape, across the world. And anything and everything that encounters it dies. Everything. It is literally the MacGuffin of the world. You can't survive it. You can't sleep through it. There's nothing you can do to stop it. So what happens? Everyone and everything must travel forward. You have to head towards the horizon, the rising sun ahead of you, because everything behind you is death. and the entire game world is an entire society of people packing up and moving ahead and constantly moving forward. And there's a concept that the world may be round or it might be a ring world. No one really knows, because there are places that people have left their homes recently because they know that they have to leave because death is coming for them. But then along the travels, people come across ruins and old places and places that have some familiarity to them that, were we here before? And so I thought it would be great to make a world in which travel and exploration is the world. There is no settling down. There are no places. Would there literally be cities that are mobile? I don't know. Maybe you might go that far. But I thought it would be interesting to have an entire society of nomads that are constantly moving, and the players always have to consider, what's our next step, what's our next move, and the community. A community would be built around the player characters that enhance, and is also their responsibility to take care of the characters' capabilities. In other words, during their downtime, they could go back to their community to refresh, recover, reassess, and they would also have different I would build call like a mini game around what kind of community they have. Are the players raiders? Are they healers? Are they hunter-gatherers? Are they trying to keep histories alive? Are they rescuers? That kind of thing. So that's what a small metagame I would have, and I would have MOs based around the exploration type of characters: scouts and navigators and surveyors and hunters and wardens and that kind of thing. It reminds me of Mortal Engines. Yeah, like that. Maybe not as many traction cities. What do you call traction cities? Oh man. But yes, but similar to that. Maybe a little bit more on the backs of turtles. Maybe caravans and maybe possibly even dirigibles and airships and things like that. Everybody moving forward. Yeah, Among the Beautiful Creatures had a similar premise. I'll leave finding further info as an exercise for the reader. Okay. Don't make me. Wonder what that is. There's the book. Oh, okay. Among the Beautiful Creatures Wiki. Okay, 2005. Amazon, adapted into a film by Warner Brothers. Young adult novel. Okay, kind of cool. All right, guys, I held you guys too long, and I've gone too long. Guys, have a great one. Thank you very much for being part of the show. Thank you very much, Drew. Drew's always critical, and I love it because you never get better until you get the until you find those cracks and crevices and like little weak links and things like that, and it doesn't get better. Mind you, for the most part, if you want to check out, please check out Cool Name Goes Here, and if you do check out Cool Name Goes Here, go to the website, see if it's something that is for you. Oh, that isn't the one you're talking about? That isn't the right one. I'm going to presume that it is the right one. I'll find it. I'll find it. I gotta go like the other Among the Beautiful Creatures, because when I was a young adult, I was like, does that take place in a fantastical world like that? I don't know. No, thank you for your streams, always giving my brain something to think about. I hope. Here's the thing. uh, even if it's something you don't like, you can always learn what you do like, right? So even when we maybe we come across some kind of intellectual property and we go, yeah, that's not really for me. What we can do is learn from that and um, categorize why it is we don't like a thing or why it rubbed us the wrong way, and get a lot more detail in terms of what we do and don't like, especially here, tabletop role-playing games, when it comes to things like dice mechanics, character sheets, combat, adjudication, character levels, hit points, and all those kind of crazy things, right? And we go, well, I don't know, I don't like that, but I know what I do like, and then we can come up with our ideas. So guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. We'll probably be talking about A5E tomorrow, Level Up Advanced 5th Edition. I was one of the contributors to that game as well. So yeah, self-promotion week. Thank you very much for tolerating that. Guys, have a great one. I really appreciate you guys just tuning in and being here this long for these streams. But it gives me a lot of energy, so I really appreciate it. Guys, thank you. And by the way, I'm going to take you out with the whole call to action, but please let other people know about it. I think would be the great thing to do, and give me some mental fuel for next week as well. Guys, do that as well. So guys, have a great one. I'll see you later. Peace and tranquility. Bye.